She was 19 and tired of pretending she still had a future, not because she was lazy, not because she had given up, but because life had slowly taken every place she thought she belonged. 3 months earlier, Naomi Carter stood outside a small yellow house in western Arizona holding 2 trash bags full of clothes while the screen door slammed behind her. Her stepfather never even looked her in the eyes. "Figure it out yourself," he said through the door. And just like that, home became something she used to have. For a while, she slept wherever people allowed her to stay. A friend's sofa, an old pickup truck behind a gas station. One week in a church shelter that smelled like bleach and wet shoes. Naomi stopped talking much after that. Silence was easier. Then one night while scrolling through county foreclosure listings on a library computer just to stay warm indoors, she found something strange. An abandoned glass workshop. $11. The photo showed cracked windows, collapsed fencing, and a rusted sign half buried in sand. Mirage Glassworks. Closed since 1987. Nobody wanted it because the desert had nearly swallowed it whole. But what she didn't know was, something had been waiting beneath that workshop for decades. And the old kiln in the center of the building wasn't just a forgotten machine. It was hiding something nobody had touched in almost 40 years. Something people once tried very hard to keep buried. Before we continue, if stories like this remind you how powerful hope can be even in the darkest moments, take a second to subscribe and stay with us until the end. Because this story isn't really about money. It's about what survives after people stop believing in you. Naomi's grandfather used to shape glass with his bare hands. At least that's what her mother always said. Not literally, of course, but when he worked near the furnace, glowing melted glass seemed to obey him. His name was Walter Carter. Most people in the small desert town of Dry River barely remembered him anymore. But Naomi remembered the stories, the workshop full of orange light, the sound of long metal rods scraping concrete, the smell of smoke and sand mixing together in the night air. When Naomi was little, her mother sometimes drove past the old, industrial road just to point at the building in the distance. "That's where your grandfather made stars," she would whisper. Naomi never understood what that meant. Stars glass was just glass. But her mother would smile sadly whenever she said it. Walter had opened Mirage Glassworks in the late 1960s with his younger brother Elias back. Then tourists still passed through Dry River on their way to Las Vegas in California. The town had diners, motels, gas stations packed with travelers. Walter became known for making hand-blown desert glass sculptures that looked almost alive under sunlight. Tiny swirling colors trapped inside crystal. People drove hours to buy them. But success didn't last. The highway changed, traffic disappeared. Businesses closed one by one, and somewhere during those years the brothers stopped speaking. Nobody knew exactly why. Naomi's mother refused to explain it. Whenever Naomi asked, her mother just said, "Some people carry secrets too long." Then she changed the subject. Years later, Walter died from lung disease after decades near the furnace heat, and within months Mirage Glassworks shut down forever. Naomi's mother inherited nothing except a small wooden box filled with old sketches. She kept it hidden in her closet for years. Naomi used to open it secretly as a child. Inside were drawings of strange glass designs, spirals, birds, desert flowers, and one sketch repeated over and over again, a circle surrounded by tiny stars. At the bottom of each page, Walter had written the same sentence: "The fire remembers." As a little girl, Naomi thought it sounded magical. As she got older, it started sounding sad. Naomi's childhood never stayed stable for long. Her father disappeared before she turned 6. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner near the interstate until her hands became rough and cracked from dish soap. Some nights, Naomi stayed awake listening to her mother cough quietly in the bathroom so nobody would hear. Money always disappeared faster than it arrived. Still, there were small, beautiful moments. Her mother teaching her how to patch torn jeans by hand. The smell of tomato soup during thunderstorms. Old records playing softly while dust floated through sunlight in the trailer kitchen. And every birthday, no matter how poor they were, her mother gave her one tiny glass animal from Walter's collection. A turtle. A fox, a bird with blue wings. Your grandfather believed broken things could still become beautiful, her mother would say. Then came the hospital bills. Everything changed. After that, her mother became weaker each year. Eventually, Naomi started skipping school to help cleaning motel rooms, stacking shelves, anything for extra money. But after her mother died, the little trailer stopped feeling like home. Her stepfather sold most of Walter's remaining belongings within months. Old tools, sketches, boxes of unfinished glass gone. Naomi tried to save what she could. But grief makes people cruel sometimes, especially people already bitter at life. By 19, Naomi owned almost nothing. Backpack, a worn denim jacket, 3 books, and 1 small glass bird wrapped carefully in cloth. The last gift her mother ever gave her. Sometimes late at night, Naomi held it toward streetlights just to watch colors move inside the glass, tiny trapped swirls of gold and blue, like something alive, like memory itself, refusing to disappear. The bus ride to Dry River took almost 9 hours. Most passengers slept, Naomi didn't. She watched empty desert stretch endlessly outside the dusty window, telephone poles dry, brush-broken signs leaning sideways in the sand. The farther they traveled, the quieter the world became. By the time she arrived, evening light had turned the desert copper. Red Dry River looked half abandoned, a faded grocery store, a motel missing letters. From its sign, wind pushing dust through empty parking lots, Naomi walked 2 miles carrying her bags. The workshop sat beyond town near a dried riverbed. At first she thought she had the wrong address. The building looked worse than the listing photo windows. Shattered roof, partially collapsed rust covering everything. The sign barely hanging above the entrance. Myridge GL SS Works. 1 letter missing. The front door groaned when she pushed it open. Heat and dust rushed outward. Inside smelled like ash-old metal burned. Earth. The workshop floor was covered in sand drifts from years of desert wind entering through cracks. Broken bottles glittered everywhere like tiny shards of ice. And there in the center of the buildings stood the kiln, massive, silent, dark, with soot. Naomi stared at it for a long time. Something about it felt strange. Not scary exactly. Just present, like the building itself was watching her arrive. That first night she slept in the old office, wrapped in her jacket, while coyotes howled somewhere beyond the Dry River, and around midnight she heard a sound, a deep metallic thump, very soft, from somewhere beneath the floor. The next morning, Naomi convinced herself she imagined it. Old buildings make noises. Metal shifts with temperature, wood settles. That's all still. She couldn't stop thinking about it. She spent days cleaning the workshop, slowly sweeping sandboarding windows, dragging broken furniture outside. Underneath, the dust pieces of the old workshop began revealing themselves. Shelves filled with colored minerals, long, steel-shaping rods, cracked safety goggles, and dozens of tiny glass fragments reflecting sunlight across the floor. Some evenings, Naomi sat quietly beside the kiln, reading Walter's old sketches she'd found scattered in drawers. Many pages were ruined by water damage, but certain symbols appeared repeatedly, star circles and strange measurements. One sketch included part of the workshop floor with handwritten notes beside the kiln, but the lower half had been torn away. That bothered her more than it should have. Why tear only that section? A week later, she discovered something else, behind old storage shelves near the back wall. There was a narrow staircase descending underground, except the staircase had been sealed shut with concrete. Poorly, as if someone rushed the job. Naomi touched the concrete surface carefully. Hairline cracks spread across it, and near the bottom corner she noticed soot marks, like smoke once escaped through there. That night she barely slept. Wind rattled broken glass outside, while questions circled endlessly in her mind. Why seal a staircase underground? Why hide it? And why did Walter keep sketching the kiln over and over? Days turned into weeks. Naomi found temporary work cleaning tables at a diner in town. People stared when she mentioned Mirage Glassworks. Especially older residents. One man stopped eating entirely when she said the name. "You shouldn't stay there alone," he muttered quietly, before Naomi could ask why he paid and left. Another woman crossed herself. "The furnace place," she whispered, then refused to explain further. The reactions unsettled Naomi, but they also deepened her curiosity. One evening after work, Naomi visited the town library, searching through old newspapers. Most articles about Mirage Glassworks focused on tourism and local art festivals until she found one dated October 1987, factory fire ends local business. The article claimed an electrical accident destroyed part of the underground storage area. No deaths reported, business permanently closed afterward, simple short, but something felt wrong. If it was only an electrical fire, why seal the staircase with concrete? Why abandon everything afterward? And why did town residents still look uncomfortable mentioning the place decades later? The librarian noticed Naomi reading an older woman with silver hair tied in a loose braid. Her name tag read Evelyn. "You related to Walter Carter?" she asked softly. Naomi nodded. Evelyn studied her face carefully. "You have your mother's eyes." That surprised Naomi. Nobody had mentioned her mother in years. Evelyn disappeared briefly into a back office and returned carrying a dusty envelope. "Your grandfather left this here long ago," she said. "Told me to give it. Only to family." Naomi's hand shook. Opening it, inside was a single photograph: Walter and Elias standing beside the kiln smiling. But someone had written on the back, "If the fire goes dark, look below where the sand never cools." No signature. No explanation, just that sentence. Naomi stared at the words for a very long time. That night, Naomi examined the kiln carefully for the first time, really carefully. The structure was enormous up close. Old bricks blackened from decades, of heat iron doors stiff with rust. She crawled around its base using a flashlight. Most of the concrete floor looked normal, except for one section near the rear foundation. The sand there felt warmer. Not hot, just slightly warm, which made no sense. The kiln hadn't operated in nearly 40 years. Naomi pressed her palm against the ground, warm very faintly. Her heartbeat quickened. Using an old shovel she found outside, she started scraping away layers of sand and debris. Hours passed. Sweat covered her neck, dust filled the air. Eventually the shovel struck metal. Clang! Naomi froze. Beneath the sand was a steel hatch, small square hidden perfectly beneath years of dirt. A thick rusted lock sealed it shut, and scratched into the metal surface were 3 words: "The fire remembers." Naomi stepped backward slowly. Her grandfather's phrase, the same words from the sketches, the same sentence she'd thought about since childhood. She should have left right then, called someone. But loneliness changes people. When you spend enough time feeling invisible, mysteries begin feeling personal. And somehow Naomi knew this place had been waiting specifically for someone who remembered Walter Carter's name. It took Naomi 2 days to break the lock. By then sandstorms had rolled across Dry River, covering the workshop in fine orange dust. The whole building groaned constantly in the wind. Finally, with one hard strike from a borrowed hammer, the lock snapped free. The hatch opened only halfway at first. Dust poured downward into darkness. Cold air rose from below, carrying the smell of ash and something older. Paper. Naomi aimed her flashlight downward. Metal ladder, underground chamber. Very small, heart pounding violently, she climbed down. The room beneath the kiln wasn't large, maybe 15 feet. Across concrete walls, low ceiling, and shelves, dozens of shelves, covered with cloth. Naomi pulled one cloth away, carefully. Glass sculptures shimmered beneath decades of dust, perfectly preserved, not ordinary pieces either. These were masterpieces, deep swirling, colors trapped inside crystal forms unlike anything Naomi had ever seen. Bird stars, human hands shaped from translucent blue glass. And in the center of the room stood a wooden chest, inside bundles of cash sealed in plastic gold coins, documents, jewelry, wrapped carefully in fabric. Naomi stared, speechless. Not millions, but enough to completely change a life. Enough to explain why someone hid this room. Her hands trembled as she continued searching. Then she found the journal. Old leather cover. Walter Carter's handwriting. She opened carefully to the first marked page. And finally, the truth emerged. Walter and Elias had discovered a rare mineral deep beneath the desert during the 1970s. When melted into glass, it created impossible colors and patterns. No other artist could reproduce. Their sculptures became valuable quickly. Collectors offered enormous amounts of money, but the mineral was unstable when overheated, dangerous fumes explosions. Elias wanted mass production. Walter refused. The brothers fought constantly, eventually. Elias secretly sold information about the mineral deposit to outside investors planning industrial mining near Dry River. Walter tried stopping them. Then came the fire, not an accident. Walter intentionally destroyed the underground access tunnels beneath the workshop to prevent mining operations from poisoning the town's water supply. Afterward, he sealed the remaining valuables and artwork underground, hidden beneath the kiln-protected weighting. At the end of the journal was a final letter addressed, simply, to whoever still remembers this family. Naomi swallowed hard and kept reading. If you found this, it means the workshop survived longer than I expected. I hid these things because some treasures should not become greed. The money is yours if you need it. But the glass belongs to the future. Promise me you won't let Mirage become another dead place forgotten by the desert. Naomi cried quietly underground while desert wind moaned above her. Not because of the money. Not even because of the discovery, but because for the first time in years, someone from her family had finally spoken to her again. Naomi didn't become rich overnight. Most of the money went toward repairing the workshop legally and paying old property debts connected to the land. The SUP process took months, then years. Some days she nearly quit. The roof leaked constantly, summer heat became unbearable, and Naomi knew nothing about glassmaking, but Evelyn helped. So did an older mechanic named Luis, who repaired the workshop generator for almost nothing after hearing Walter's name. Slowly, Naomi learned how to handle molten glass safely, how to shape edges, how to control heat at first. Everything cracked, collapsed, failed. Naomi burned her hands more than once. But every evening she reread Walter's journal. Every mistake became part of the process, part of the inheritance. Eventually, tourists returning through the region started noticing the restored workshop Mirage. Glassworks reopened quietly with only a small handmade sign outside Naomi. Sold tiny pieces, first glass birds, desert flower stars, always stars, and every finished piece carried one tiny etched phrase underneath. The fire remembers. Months later, a collector from Phoenix offered Naomi a huge amount for the hidden sculptures discovered underground. She refused. Instead, she displayed them inside the workshop with Walter's story beside them. People traveled surprisingly far to see them. Not because they were expensive, but because they felt human, fragile, surviving. Like the workshop itself, some places aren't abandoned because they're empty. Sometimes they're abandoned because the people who built them ran out of strength before their story finished. Naomi understood that now. The workshop was never really about hidden money. It was about memory, about protecting something meaningful long enough for the right person to return. All those years, Naomi believed she came from nothing, but beneath dust, grief, silence, and time, her family had left behind proof that beauty could survive hardship, buried underground, even forgotten. Especially forgotten. 2 years after arriving in Dry River, Naomi stood outside Mirage Glassworks at sunset watching orange light spill across the desert. The building no longer looked haunted. Warm light glowed through. Repaired windows, wind chimes made from broken glass pieces clinked softly near the entrance. Inside, the kiln burned again. Steady alive, tourists laughed quietly somewhere behind her, but Naomi barely noticed. She held the small blue glass bird her mother once gave her and turned it toward the fading sunlight. Gold swirls danced inside the glass exactly like before. Only now, she finally understood why her mother loved these pieces so much. Because glass survives fire by becoming something new. Naomi looked toward the workshop one last time before heading inside, and for the first time since she was thrown out at 19, she no longer felt abandoned. She felt rooted, like the desert had finally given something back. If this story moved you in any way, subscribe for more emotional mystery stories like this one. And in the comments, tell us about something in your life that once felt broken but later became part of who you are.